The Unseen Strength Introduction to Wade Thorne's story. In the remote, rugged terrain of Montana, nestled deep within the Ironwood Valley, there lies a story that goes beyond the simple narrative of good versus evil. It's a tale where the lines between heroism and survival blur, where what seems like a quiet, ordinary life is revealed to be far more dangerous than any outsider could imagine. For those who seek to conquer this isolated valley, it's not the mountains or the rivers that will challenge them, but rather the unexpected and deadly power of an old soldier who knows how to fight smarter, not harder. Imagine a farm simple, peaceful, and far from the chaos of urban life. For outsiders, it might seem like nothing more than a quiet piece of land, nestled between the vast, sweeping views of the Montana mountains. But for those who know, this farm is not just a place to grow crops or tend to animals. It is the home of Wade Thorne, a man whose past is as complex and dangerous as the land he calls home. A man who has spent decades honing his skills in the shadows, leading some of the most covert and high-stakes missions in military history as the commander of Delta Force. Wade's call sign was Phantom, a ghost who struck from the darkness and vanished without a trace. To most people, Wade Thorne might seem like just another aging rancher. But the truth is far more intricate and fascinating than what meets the eye. Underneath the surface of his quiet life, Wade possesses a lethal skill set, one that was forged in the fire of battle and honed through years of high-risk operations in the world's most dangerous zones. It is these very skills, combined with the land he owns, that will turn the tables when the most powerful and ruthless Mexican cartel sets its sights on his farm. The story we are about to dive into is not just about a man defending his property. It is about how a forgotten warrior, a retired soldier, is forced to come out of the shadows to protect everything he has left. But it also offers something much deeper, a commentary on the unexpected strength of a community that bands together when their way of life is threatened. Wade's defense of his farm goes beyond a personal struggle. It becomes a metaphor for the resilience and power of people working together for the common good, using more than just physical strength to ward off danger. This is not just about weapons and tactics. It is about using intelligence, preparation, and a community's unity as an impenetrable defense. In the coming paragraphs, I'll walk you through how Wade and his elite team of former military operatives dismantled an entire cartel operation in just 5 days. This will not only highlight Wade's extraordinary tactical genius, but also reveal the broader implications of his actions in a battle for more than just land. It is a battle for control, for survival, and for preserving the peace of a community that refuses to give up. The opening scenes of this story are set at dawn, a time when the world seems calm, but danger lurks just beneath the surface. Wade is walking the perimeter of his property with his loyal German shepherd, Atlas, by his side. His eyes, though weathered by years of combat, still scan every detail with an acute awareness. Something isn't right. Fresh tire tracks appear in the dirt, signaling the arrival of something, or someone, unwelcome. These tracks are deep, too deep for a local vehicle. As Wade continues his patrol, the calm exterior of the valley begins to fracture. This is where the real story begins, and it is the start of a journey that will reveal more than anyone bargained for. But why does this story matter? On the surface, it may seem like just another action-packed tale of good guys versus bad guys. Yet, when we dig deeper, it becomes evident that this is far from ordinary. This story is a reflection on the often overlooked power of those who have lived through unimaginable circumstances, who have seen the world from a perspective that many of us cannot even fathom. Wade Thorne is a man who represents the spirit of the underdog, a person who might seem vulnerable but has a history and set of skills that make him anything but helpless. One of the key themes we will explore is how the world views veterans. Too often, we see veterans as relics of a past time, individuals who have served their purpose and now live in the shadows of their former lives. Yet, this story demonstrates that veterans, like Wade, can be the very last line of defense when the world turns against them. Their skills, forged in conflict, provide them with an unmatched ability to handle threats that most people would crumble under. But what makes Wade's case so compelling is that he is not alone. He is supported by an equally elite team of former operatives who share his desire to protect not only their land but the lives of the people they care about. Together, They form an unlikely but indomitable force, working seamlessly as a team to dismantle the cartel's operation. Another aspect that adds depth to this story is the power of the community that Wade has built around him. When Wade senses that the cartel is moving in, he doesn't just prepare for battle on his own. Instead, he reaches out to old friends, men who fought beside him in places that don't appear on any map. But even more than that, he reaches out to his neighbors. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The seemingly quiet and docile citizens of Ironwood Valley are not helpless bystanders. They are an essential part of Wade's plan to thwart the cartel's advance. Together, they create a defense system so subtle and effective that the cartel doesn't even realize it's happening until it's too late. What appears to be a sleepy farming community is actually a well-coordinated, military-grade defense network. Now, imagine what it would be like if a cartel, one of the most powerful and feared organizations in the world, mistakenly believed they were targeting just another piece of land. They come in with overwhelming force, thinking they are dealing with an elderly man who will be easily intimidated. Instead, they walk into a trap. What makes this story so fascinating isn't just the physical fight, but the mental game at play. Wade, a man who has seen it all, prepares not only for the confrontation but for the aftermath. His training allows him to think several steps ahead, anticipate the cartel's every move, and use their overconfidence against them. The tactics employed by Wade and his team are a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. They don't rely on brute force or conventional methods. Instead, they use the terrain, their knowledge of the land, and their understanding of human behavior to create a defense system that is not just effective but nearly impossible to penetrate. This is where the true power of Wade's experience shines through. He has fought battles that most people couldn't even imagine, but he knows that the battlefield is not always a physical space. Sometimes, it's the way you make your enemy think they have the upper hand until it's too late. This is also a story about the evolution of Wade's relationship with the land. At first, it seems like the farm is just a place for him to retreat from the chaos of his past. But as the story unfolds, we realize that the land is not just a place of refuge. It is a symbol of everything Wade has fought for: his family, his country, and the way of life he cherishes. This personal stake in the outcome of the battle adds an emotional layer to the story that goes beyond the action. Wade is not just fighting for his farm. He is fighting for the preservation of everything he believes in. But what happens when the battle ends? What happens when the enemy has been defeated, but the war is far from over? Wade's fight is not just a one-time conflict. It is a battle for the future of his community. The real test is not in the immediate victory but in how he, and the people around him, rebuild after the dust settles. How do you rebuild when everything you've fought for is on the line? How do you turn a single victory into something that will protect you for years to come? This is where the true strength of Wade's story lies: his ability to not only survive but to adapt and create a future where his community can continue to thrive, without fear of being targeted again. So, as we move deeper into this story, consider the broader implications. It's not just about one man versus a cartel. It's about a community that stands united against a common threat. It's about the power of strategy, preparation, and unity in the face of overwhelming force. And it's about how sometimes the most effective defense isn't what you expect. It's the ability to make your enemy question everything they thought they knew. And in this case, it's a community that doesn't need to fight at all to win. They simply make the fight too hard for their enemies to ever want to take it on again. Unraveling the cartel, the strategy and tactics behind Wade's victory. When Wade Thorne first noticed the suspicious tire tracks on his property, the first sign of a looming threat, he could have easily brushed it off as a random occurrence, a passing nuisance. But as someone who had spent over 30 years in combat, both in classified and highly dangerous military operations, he knew that instinctively brushing aside such signals could be a fatal mistake. The subtle signs of an impending danger were enough to rattle even a man as seasoned as Wade. As we dive deeper into the story, it's crucial to recognize that Wade's training as a Delta Force commander wasn't just about muscle or brute strength. It wasn't about having a superior weapon or firepower. It was about the art of deception, anticipation, and preparation. Wade and his elite team were poised not just to fight, They were prepared to control the battlefield from the moment the first cartel vehicles rolled onto his land. The battle plan, creating a lethal trap. To an untrained eye, the idea of fighting back against a cartel invasion on your land might seem hopeless. Cartels like those from Mexico are notorious for their brutality, well-funded operations, and their willingness to use excessive force to get what they want. But Wade wasn't just going to rely on his weapons cache to protect his farm. No, his expertise told him that a direct confrontation would be risky, not only for him but also for the entire community around him. Instead, Wade used his knowledge of asymmetrical warfare, an unconventional form of combat that turns the enemy's strength against them. Wade's first action, upon realizing the cartel was targeting his land, was to retreat into what could be considered his safe zone. His hidden cellar beneath the barn, a place he had set up for just such an emergency. Inside this hidden refuge lay the tools and resources of a military commander, including military-grade communication systems, weapons, and tactical gear. For most civilians, these items might be seen as excessive, but for Wade, they were the lifeline to protect his family and home. Yet it wasn't just the cache of weapons that would save him, it was his mind. Wade immediately began setting up a detailed defensive plan that made full use of the natural landscape around his farm. The terrain of Montana, with its hills, open fields, and wooded areas, became his battlefield. Every rise, every tree, every road leading to his farm was transformed into a strategic advantage. He knew exactly where to place his team, where the best sniper nests would be, and how to manipulate the movements of the cartel's forces. While the cartel advanced, unaware of the trap they were about to walk into, Wade's team was already in position, using their unique skills to build the defensive perimeter. They used their deep knowledge of guerrilla tactics and military intelligence to stay one step ahead of the enemy. What made their response so effective was the use of deception. The cartel thought they were encountering an easy target, an aging farmer, when in fact they were about to walk into an expertly laid-out kill zone. The role of Wade's team, a collective force of special operations veterans. Wade didn't act alone. While he might have been the mastermind behind the plan, the success of the operation was built on the backs of his former military team. These were not just old friends who had shared a bond in battle. They were some of the most skilled and lethal operatives in the world. Together, they had faced down terrorists, warlords, and armies. Cartels wouldn't stand a chance against them. There's something uniquely powerful about a team that has fought together for years. It's not just about trust, but a shared understanding of how each individual moves in combat, how each one reacts in high-stakes situations. This collective experience enabled them to act with unparalleled efficiency, creating a seamless strategy that flowed naturally. Take Knox, for example, the team's sniper. A former military marksman, he was able to identify the best positions on the battlefield, setting up sniper nests that would provide the perfect vantage point to eliminate the cartel forces one by one. His role wasn't just about eliminating threats. It was about controlling the pace of the battle, forcing the cartel to question their tactics and decisions. Then there's Cyrus, the team's demolition expert. His role was to create chaos among the cartel's ranks, using controlled explosions to disorient, isolate, and fragment their forces. The explosions were not designed to kill. Wade's goal was always precision, not mindless destruction. By controlling the movement of the cartel with explosions and other tactical maneuvers, Cyrus ensured that the enemy was always playing catch-up. And of course, Nash, the team's medic, who wasn't just there to treat wounds. His role went beyond first aid. He was integral in ensuring the team stayed alive and functional throughout the operation. His tactical medical expertise allowed the team to continue their work with minimal setbacks, even when faced with injuries. What's so fascinating about Wade's team is that each member brought something critical to the table, yet they all shared one common trait. They had all fought in places where survival was the only option. This experience, the weight of having been through years of war, gave them an edge no amount of money or force could overcome. In fact, the cartel's biggest mistake was underestimating these veterans. They assumed they were up against an old man and a few farmers, but in reality, they were facing an intricately designed operation, a carefully planned strategy executed by some of the most dangerous people alive. The cartel's missteps, overconfidence, and underestimation. It's a classic case of overconfidence. The cartel, accustomed to getting what they wanted through fear and violence, expected the people of Ironwood Valley to buckle under pressure. They thought that by simply showing up with their usual threats, they would get what they wanted: land to further their operations. But they couldn't have been more wrong. Wade's team didn't just respond with force. They played a psychological game that left the cartel confused and disoriented. They created a sense of paranoia within the enemy's ranks, making them question their decisions and their safety at every turn. Every move they made, every position they tried to secure was met with resistance. Nothing about the battle played out the way they thought it would. In a critical moment, Wade even directly confronted the cartel's leader, El Fantasma. Instead of using brute force, he used psychological warfare, calling out the cartel's leader by name and using their own tactics against them. This moment wasn't just about the physical confrontation. It was a testament to the power of strategy and mental fortitude. Wade wasn't just fighting for his land. He was dismantling an entire operation with precision and intelligence. The power of a community more than just soldiers. The most compelling part of this story isn't just about military strategy or the incredible skills of Wade and his team. It's about the community that came together to fight the cartel. From the very beginning, Wade understood that he couldn't protect Ironwood Valley on his own. He needed the support of his neighbors, the people who lived and worked alongside him. And they delivered in ways that no one, including the cartel, could have predicted. What made this defense so effective wasn't just the weapons or the tactics. It was the fact that every member of the community, from the farmers to the local sheriff, played a role in the operation. They didn't need to be trained soldiers. They just needed to understand their land, observe the right patterns, and communicate effectively. It was a collective effort that made the valley impossible to conquer. The cartel never stood a chance because they couldn't understand that the valley's true strength didn't lie in weapons. It lay in the people who knew it best. This idea of a community defense network, where ordinary people are trained to identify threats and respond appropriately, is a powerful message in itself. It goes beyond the typical action hero narrative. This wasn't a group of soldiers saving the day. This was a community coming together, using its collective knowledge and resources to protect what mattered most. The aftermath, what comes next? After the dust settled and the cartel was defeated, the real work began. Wade's victory didn't end with the physical battle. It was just the beginning of an ongoing effort to keep Ironwood Valley safe. As law enforcement arrived and the FBI began their investigation, Wade and his team worked quietly behind the scenes to ensure their efforts remained hidden, allowing the community to take full credit for the defense. In the aftermath, Wade realized that the battle was not just about protecting his farm. It was about protecting the community he had come to cherish. The people of Ironwood Valley had shown themselves to be not just survivors but active participants in their own defense. And while Wade's role as Phantom might have ended, the true strength of his victory lay in the continued resilience of the community. This battle wasn't just about defending a farm, it was a statement. A statement that some communities, when united and prepared, cannot be touched by outside forces, no matter how powerful or well-equipped they might be. The success of Ironwood Valley is a testament to the power of unity, preparation, and the unshakable will to protect what you love. The lasting impact transforming a valley into a fortress of defense. In the aftermath of the battle, as the first rays of sunlight hit the horizon over Ironwood Valley, a transformation had occurred that was both profound and lasting. What had once been a quiet, unsuspecting farming community now stood as a shining example of what it meant to take control of one's own fate, using a combination of strategy, preparation, and unity. The last confrontation with the cartel's assault force had been a turning point, but what came afterward was arguably more critical. The realization that true security doesn't just come from firepower or military prowess, but from the hearts and minds of the people who live in a community. What had started as an isolated battle to protect a home and land had grown into a collective defense, an unyielding bond among neighbors who were willing to fight for each other, whether they held a rifle or not. The invisible walls of security. What made Ironwood Valley's victory so powerful wasn't just the tactical brilliance displayed in the confrontation. It was the realization that their true strength lay in being underestimated. The cartel, accustomed to ruling with fear and violence, thought they understood power. But they didn't realize that the greatest weapon was the invisible network of community defense that Wade and his team had set up. The valley's defenses were not all about weaponry and explosive traps. It was a sophisticated web of observation, communication, and coordination, disguised as mundane rural life. Wade and his team had effectively turned the valley into a fortress, but not one made of walls or barbed wire. Instead, it was built on trust, awareness, and the shared knowledge of the land. The farmers, ranchers, and townspeople, armed not with automatic rifles but with their understanding of the terrain, had become the eyes and ears that made the valley almost impenetrable. They weren't just reacting to threats, they were proactively identifying vulnerabilities, learning the patterns of those who might do them harm, and then leveraging their everyday activities to disrupt any malicious movements. This wasn't a battle of brute force, but one of precision and timing. Take, for example, the residents' response to the cartel scouts who had come to survey the area. What the scouts thought were harmless farmers going about their daily routines turned into a coordinated, deliberate operation of intelligence gathering. Farmers weren't just noticing suspicious vehicles. They were reporting them through secure networks, providing critical updates and alerts. Meanwhile, Knox, disguised as a simple local sniper, had taken his position in the hills, ready to deliver a calculated message if the scouts dared to press further. In this way, the valley's first line of defense was in its ability to blend in, while its second line was a sharp, hidden force that knew exactly how to strike. The people of Ironwood Valley were no longer mere bystanders. They had become active participants in their own defense. They understood that being part of a community means more than sharing crops and livestock. It meant watching out for each other, being vigilant, and contributing to the collective safety. This was no longer just about Wade's victory. It was about the transformation of an entire culture, one that valued protection, not just from external enemies but from internal complacency. The power of bureaucratic defense. Wade's experience during the battle had taught him an important lesson. The best defense is not always about what your enemy expects. The cartel expected violence. They expected force. But what they encountered was something more insidious. A defense built around layers of complexity, not easily understood or broken. The second phase of Wade's strategy, the one that would prove to be just as effective as the tactical strikes, was the implementation of bureaucratic defenses. The cartel had hoped to slowly buy up properties across the valley, using their usual tactics of overpaying for land to push out those who wouldn't sell. However, Wade knew that the best way to stop them wasn't with direct confrontation, but by making the land less valuable. The use of environmental and historical regulations, real legal protections, acted as an invisible wall that the cartel couldn't overcome. By strategically building up legal and bureaucratic barriers, Wade and his team made it impossible for the cartel to develop the valley without jumping through endless regulatory hoops. It wasn't just a clever use of paperwork. It was a brilliant tactical move. It turned the valley's most valuable resource, its land, into an area so tied up in regulations that the cartel would have to spend years, if not decades, trying to break through. As one of the team members put it, the bureaucratic layers were like a maze that no one would ever want to navigate. The environmental contamination story was particularly effective. It not only kept the cartel from buying up land, but also prevented outsiders from coming in to disrupt the community's fragile peace. This focus on legal defense played a crucial role in the long-term sustainability of the valley's security. The cartel's continued pressure to break through these barriers, while intelligent, became increasingly futile. Wade and his team had understood from the very beginning that once the cartel's financial power became their strength, their own legal tools, public records, historical preservation, endangered species status, would become their greatest weaknesses. And so, they turned the cartel's usual tactics against them, not through violence, but by making everything they tried to do a bureaucratic nightmare. The subtle transformation of Ironwood Valley. As the days passed and the community started to see the effects of their collective action, it became clear that the true victory had not been won on the battlefield, but in the minds of the residents. Ironwood Valley had not only secured its land from external threats, it had solidified a culture of resilience and community unity. What had been a sleepy, vulnerable region had now transformed into a powerful example of what happens when people decide to protect themselves, not just by fighting, but by building the invisible walls that keep enemies at bay. The battle for Ironwood Valley was a turning point, not only for the people involved but for communities across the nation. It sent a message. Security isn't just about having weapons. It's about having a plan, understanding your environment, and most importantly, knowing the people around you. This was the real lesson of Wade's success. His team didn't just defeat the cartel with firepower and explosives. They did it through planning, foresight, and the strength of community collaboration. One of the most fascinating aspects of this transformation was how the community began to see themselves. They weren't helpless victims anymore. They weren't just passive residents of a remote area. They had become empowered defenders of their land, actively participating in the security of their valley. Each person had their role to play, whether it was as a lookout, a communicator, or even a strategist, and they did so with an unspoken understanding that they were all in this together, adapting to new threats. While the cartel was defeated, the work wasn't over. Wade and his team understood that the nature of conflict had changed. The cartel wasn't just going to walk away quietly. They were going to regroup, adapt, and try again. And that's when the true strength of their defensive strategies came into play. It wasn't enough to just fend off one assault. Wade knew that maintaining the security of Ironwood Valley required constant adaptation. The community had proven their worth, but now it was time to turn their collective vigilance into something more sustainable. Each person had to continue their role, learning how to adapt to new threats. The strength of a defense system wasn't just in its initial success. It was in its ability to evolve and stay one step ahead of those who would do it harm. The cartels, once convinced they had it all figured out, would now have to contend with a new type of force. No longer would they face just a group of farmers. They would face a community that was constantly evolving, adapting, and learning from each attack. Every time the cartels adjusted their tactics, Ironwood Valley would adjust with them, staying unpredictable and constantly shifting their defenses. As we reflect on the true essence of the story, its message, its tactics, and its lessons, it's clear that Ironwood Valley offers a deeper insight into what it means to defend not just a piece of land, but a way of life. Wade's success was rooted not in his military expertise alone, but in his ability to recognize that the ultimate victory lay in the unity of his community, the strength of their resolve, and their willingness to adapt. In a world where conventional warfare and defense strategies often fall short, the success of Ironwood Valley demonstrates that sometimes the greatest weapon is the people you're trying to protect. As we close this chapter on Wade's incredible journey, one truth stands clear. When it comes to defense, preparation, unity, and adaptability are the keys to victory, no matter the enemy. Ironwood Valley didn't just survive. It thrived, because its people understood the true meaning of resilience. In the next phase of this remarkable story, we'll see how the lessons of Ironwood Valley can be applied to other communities. Can other regions learn to adapt their defenses and strengthen their resolve like Wade's community? How do we build the next Ironwood Valley? Stay tuned for more. For Mini, Banda NOI, Fanteep, ChatGPT NOI, Part 4, Lessons in Resilience and Adapting to the Future. As the dust settled over Ironwood Valley, the full impact of the changes began to take shape. What had started as a small, seemingly insignificant battle between one man and the cartel had spiraled into something much bigger. The valley was no longer just a quiet farming community. It had transformed into a well-oiled machine of defense, where every resident understood their role, every tactic was carefully crafted, and the entire community had become a fortress. Not through walls, but through unity and preparation. The power of community in defense. One of the most profound takeaways from the success of Ironwood Valley lies in the role of community. It's easy to overlook the quiet strength that comes from a collective group of people working together towards a single goal. We often imagine defense as something that requires heavily armed soldiers, high-tech equipment, and sophisticated military strategies. But Ironwood Valley taught us that true defense comes not from brute force, but from creating a network of individuals who care deeply about their land, their families, and each other. Wade and his team understood that the key to Ironwood Valley's success wasn't just in military expertise. It was in empowering the people. Each farmer, rancher, and townsperson who contributed to the defense wasn't just a passive observer. They were an active participant in shaping their own future. By transforming ordinary people into vigilant defenders of their homes, Wade created something far more powerful than an army. He created a living, breathing network of guardians. This concept can be applied to other communities as well. What would it look like if every small town and rural area across the nation took it upon themselves to create a similar system of defense? Not one centered on fear or suspicion, but on awareness, preparation, and solidarity. By forming these tight-knit, resilient communities, we can ensure that when a crisis arises, we are not just waiting for outside help, we are ready to handle it ourselves. Bureaucratic defense, the underrated strategy. While the traditional narrative of defense revolves around the immediate use of force, Ironwood Valley showcased the power of indirect strategies like bureaucratic defense. In the case of the cartel, the valley's success didn't come from trying to fight them head-on, but from turning the land into a logistical nightmare for them to conquer. Through a well-thought-out mix of environmental laws, historical preservation statutes, and strategic use of zoning restrictions, Wade had effectively built a fortress of legal hurdles. But this wasn't just a legal game. Each regulation had a legitimate foundation. Everything from endangered species protection to military testing grounds had roots in truth. What Wade did was harness the power of legitimate resources and make them work for him. It's a reminder that not all defenses need to be fought with weapons. Sometimes the greatest weapon is knowledge, understanding how to use the system to your advantage. We can learn a valuable lesson here. In a world where threats often come from all angles, whether they are physical, cyber, or economic, understanding the systems that govern us and knowing how to leverage them can become an essential part of our own defense. Just as the cartel struggled against the valley's intricate legal defenses, so too can we use rules, regulations, and frameworks to protect our own interests in times of crisis. The ongoing struggle, new threats on the horizon. But the story of Ironwood Valley doesn't end with one victory. Every successful defense creates new challenges. As the community grew more adept at protecting itself, the enemies of the valley, the criminal organizations, also adapted. No longer would the cartel rely solely on brute force or legal loopholes. They had learned that this was a battle of wits, a battle of patience, and above all, a battle of information. Ironwood Valley's victory had given the people the confidence to believe that they could handle any challenge. However, as Wade and his team soon realized, the fight was far from over. The cartel had seen their mistake and were preparing for a more sophisticated attack. But this time, the people of Ironwood were ready, not just with weapons or bureaucratic obstacles, but with a new layer of defense: adaptability. This adaptability became the hallmark of Ironwood Valley's continued success. Whether it was a new legal challenge, an attempted military-style assault, or even a sophisticated disinformation campaign, Wade's team had learned the importance of staying one step ahead. They didn't just wait for their enemies to act. They anticipated the next move and prepared for it in advance. This level of foresight and flexibility allowed them to continually outmaneuver their adversaries, ensuring that no matter what strategy the cartel threw at them, the valley would remain secure. The Community Watch, a new model for rural defense. At the heart of the ongoing security in Ironwood Valley was the Community Watch. This system was not just a small-town initiative. It was a full-fledged network of people working together to keep their homes, farms, and families safe. The key difference here was that it was inclusive. Every member of the valley, from the youngest to the oldest, played a role in maintaining the community's safety. Think about it. What if every community across the country adopted a similar approach? Imagine a world where communities weren't just reliant on law enforcement or military intervention, but actively participated in the defense of their own neighborhoods. People wouldn't just be concerned about themselves. They'd be vigilant for each other, ready to spot suspicious activity, share information, and ensure that every neighbor was safe. This model of self-reliance and shared responsibility could revolutionize the way we approach community security. What makes this model so effective is its ability to be both visible and invisible at the same time. On the surface, it appears like a normal, rural community going about their daily lives. But beneath the surface, there is a high level of preparedness, with everyone ready to spring into action when needed. This blend of normalcy with readiness creates an environment where criminals, and even law enforcement, are unsure of what exactly they're up against. This is where the strength of Ironwood Valley lies. In the seamless integration of defense and everyday life, the role of technology hidden in plain sight. As Ironwood Valley continued to evolve, it wasn't just about community engagement and legal maneuvering, it was also about technology. What had once been a patchwork of surveillance cameras and radios grew into a sophisticated monitoring network, embedded within the community itself. Zane's role as the technological mastermind behind the scenes cannot be understated. Through his surveillance systems, the valley had transformed into a live, real-time intelligence network. The beauty of this technological setup was its simplicity. The residents didn't need to be high-tech experts. They were trained to use basic equipment to monitor suspicious activity, send reports, and communicate with each other. The intelligence gathered wasn't just from fancy surveillance satellites or high-tech drones. It was from the eyes and ears of the community. It was people-powered technology, and that made all the difference. Looking to the future, what's next for Ironwood Valley? While the community had become adept at fending off cartel threats, the larger question remained, what comes next for Ironwood Valley? The region had proven that it could protect itself from external forces, but would this newfound unity last? The next step was to maintain the momentum, ensuring that the defense network didn't become complacent. Wade and his team had to constantly evolve their strategies, not just to protect against cartel attacks, but to preserve the integrity of their community. The battle for Ironwood Valley had opened up a new chapter, not just in defending land, but in reimagining what it meant to be a community in the modern world. It wasn't about fighting wars. It was about creating a sustainable, secure environment where everyone had a role to play in ensuring the safety and well-being of their neighbors. The transformation of Ironwood Valley is a testament to the power of adaptation and unity. It shows that when communities come together, they can face any challenge, no matter how daunting. The Valley story is a model for others who wish to take control of their own destinies. It may not always require bullets or bombs. Sometimes, the greatest weapon is the strength of the community itself, and the ability to adapt and innovate in the face of adversity. As we watch Ironwood Valley continue to evolve, the message is clear. When faced with threats, it's not the walls or weapons that make the greatest defense. It's the people, the community, and the unity they create. Ironwood Valley has become a living, breathing testament to the fact that true security comes from within. The next time you look at a small town or community, remember, it's not the size of the force that matters. It's the strength of the people, united by a common cause, and the will to adapt and defend what they hold dear.